So thanks for the opportunity to share with you what we have been doing. So today I'm going to talk about multi-scale exploration of two-dimensional materials in nanofluidics and DNA sequencing. Many projects in my group have benefited from the computational power of blue waters, and among them are DNA sequencing using MS2 and the Mechano-Sensitive channels. And in this MS2 project, we found that the DNA sequencing based on MS2 is outperforms graphene by 5 times if you compare the signal to noise ratio. And this work is summarized in ACS Nano in last year. And in this Mechano-Sensitive channel, and for the first time we introduced this channel into a DNA sequencing. And the good thing about this channel is it can provide two distinguishable channels. One is the tension and one is ionic current. So making it a very promising channel for DNA sequencing. And this work is summarized in Journal of Physical Chemistry Letter this year. And also we use the computational power to study the water interaction with hexagonal boron nitride and from first principle calculations. And my talk today will mainly focus on second part. First, I will introduce a little bit about this hexagonal boron nitride. So hexagonal boron nitride is similar to graphene by replacing carbon with boron and nitrogen atoms. And like the graphene family, the hexagonal boron nitride also have a structure of different dimension. It has a bulk, nanotube, buckable, and also monolayer. And compared to graphene family, this material have several advantages. First one is a non-cytotoxic, and the being nanotube doesn't affect the growth of cell, while CNT prohibits cell growth. So this material is biocompatible. And second, the being tube is stable up to 900 degrees C, while at the same temperature, CNT is damaged already. So it can be used in high temperature applications. And third, this material has consistent band gap, well, the band gap of CNT would depend on the size and chirality. So given all these advantages, this BM material can be promising material complementary to graphene. And there is a recent experiment in which they use the BM nanotube to convert ionic gradient into giant electricity. And these have applications to harvest energy from seawater. And so we would like to, apply this material into nanofluidics applications. But the challenge is that we don't know how water interacts with surface. More fundamentally, we don't know what's the binding energy between water and the surface. Usually this interaction energy is estimated by measuring water contact on the surface. And so here I have a summary of the contact angle values reported in the literature, both by experiments and simulations. And the x-axis is angles, is the range of the contact angle values, and the y-axis is frequency. The values in this range has been reported. For instance, 4 here means 4 different groups in the literature reported values in this range. So we see there is a big scattering of the data, both simulation from experiments and simulation. In experiments, this is due to surface contamination and defects. For instance, one experiment was able to observe the change of contact angle values with time when the surface is exposed to the air. And in theory, two groups use the density functional theory with dispersion corrections to study this system. But you see, the values, the contact values they are reporting falls in two different regions. So given the uncertainties on the contact values, so it's not reliable to estimate the binding energy based on any of this data point. So we propose to take another approach. So we propose to use solve these many-body Schrödinger equations to estimate the interaction energy. So X here represents the position of all the electrons in the system, and the psi here is a wave function, so it's related to the probability of finding electrons in some positions. And Hamiltonian here is Hamiltonian is composed of kinetic energy of electrons, electron-nuclear interaction, and electron-electron interaction. And this term here this E is the energy of the system. And this electron interaction is a challenging term. And many methods, approach this term in different ways. For instance, they use some approximations or replace this term by some ad hoc formula. For instance, density functional theory try to replace this with density exchange correlation functional. But for the system we are interested in the non-bonding interaction between water and the surface. Most of the interaction actually come from this term. So this term has to be dealt with very high accuracy to describe the system in a realistic way. Density functional theory, which had a ad hoc formula here, and it turned to underestimate the interaction strength. So we need to go way beyond that. So the method we are using is called diffusion Monte Carlo method. So it's a method that uses the Monte Carlo technique to solve Schrödinger equations. And I'm not going to bring too much details here, but the idea of this method is that it has a one-to-one map between the Schrödinger equation and the stochastic process. So it maps the wave function, the thing we are trying to solve, to the distribution of workers. And it maps the kinetic operator into the diffusion equation and the potential energy operator into the burst and death equation. So here I will use a simple harmonic oscillator to show how this method works. So in harmonic oscillator, the external potential have a parabolic shape. And for the initial gas, so we take a wild gas. That is, we assume that it's the wave function is is a constant. We know it's a wild gas, and we will show how. And based on this gas, the initial distribution also is a uniform distribution. So these two figures will show how the distribution evolve with time and from the ground state of the Schrödinger equation. And we see that with the evolution of time, workers are created at the position where the potential is high and is killed at the position where it's low by this burst and death equation. And with time, they will be accumulated in the middle. And if you look at their distribution, it's a Gaussian distribution. And we know that's a solution to this harmonic ground state for this harmonic oscillator. So that's how this method works. And this diffusion, from this illustration, we know that there is no fitting parameters for this method, and also this method scales very well with the size of system. So it's considered to be the most accurate method for large system. And we also verify this method for the system we are interested by comparing to the coupled cluster method with complete basis set. And we use the BN hexagon interaction with water as a model system, and we vary the distance between water and the molecule, the separation distance, so that we can consider various configurations. And we see that a good agreement between these two methods is observed not only at the equilibrated structure, and it's also a good agreement is also observed as a repulsive region and a medium separation distance region. So this lays the foundation for us to use DMC to study larger systems. And we use the package to do this DMC calculation is called QWalk. So the computation cost for the BM monolayer is very expensive. So here I have number. One data point costs about like 1 million quarts. So that's pretty expensive. So that's why it's ideal to run these jobs on blue waters because the QWalk code scales almost linearly with number of cores up to 60,000 CPUs. So the jobs that used to take weeks on other systems can be finished within a couple of days or even hours on blue waters. So that's why in order to simulate the real monolayer blue water system has been used. So here are some results I'm showing here. And we make sure that the energy we are calculating is well converged with the system, with all sorts of system configurations. And one of the errors that is hard to capture is called finite size error. And this error happens when we try to use the supercell and apply periodic boundary conditions to represent the infinite surface. And this error can be estimated by considering supercell different sizes, and then plot the energy and the interaction energy per water over the 1 over the number of the water molecules in the system. So a couple things we can see from this figure. First one, the energy and the interaction energy does depend on the size of supercell. And second, the dependence is almost linear. So we did a linear extrapolation and get to extrapolate to the infinite supercell limit. So in this extrapolation, because we want to reduce the errors in the extrapolation, so we want more data point. But that would mean we need to simulate a really big supercell. So that's why, without blue water, this kind of simulation is not possible. And we also considered other sort of errors. For instance, the error due to different water density and also different water orientation and different K points. And we make sure that all the errors are well controlled. And then we have this binding energy for a single water molecule intact with the monolayer. So I want to point out that this is first time this system has been studied with such high accuracy. So once we know, we have the energy, we would like to develop force field parameters so that we can use molecular dynamic simulations to study larger systems. And DMC is too expensive for that. So what we did is we used the computational expensive method that called MP2 method, to compute the interaction energy. But so the plan is that we use the DMC to verify the MP2 for one configuration and then use the MP2 method for other configurations. So and in MP2 considers molecular interactions, and then we have some extrapolation technique to extrapolate the molecular interaction to surface interaction. So here is the summary of the energy we obtain, and both at the molecule level, one corresponds to this size, and infinity corresponds to the surface level. And we see that a good agreement between MP2 and couple cluster and diffusion Monte Carlo is observed at the molecular level, and a good agreement between MP2 and DMC is observed in the surface level. So that benchmarks the MP2 pretty well. And also I have 2 points here, and that's the estimation of the interaction energy using the diffusion, using the density function theory with the dispersion correction. We see that, for two different schemes of the dispersion correction, both of them overestimates the interaction strength by almost by almost twice. So that's why we cannot do this density function theory with dispersion. We need to go beyond that. So with the benchmark, So with this benchmark for MP2, we use MP2 to consider various configurations, and then we did some least square fitting to get parameters. And one thing we can do is, after we get parameters, one thing we can do is we can simulate the water contact angle, use these parameters, use molecular dynamic simulations. In MD simulations, we start the system with water droplet of arbitrary shape, and then we let the system to evolve, and it will finally evolve into a spherical, the normal droplet shape, and then we do density analysis and then get the contact angle, and then the contact angle reporting is about this value, and that happens. earlier I mentioned that one experiment observes change of contact angle with time when it's exposed to the air. When initially it's clean, I mean the contact angle is about 40 degrees, and that's about, and our result confirms that. So as a summary, we would like to apply hexagonal this material into nanofluidic applications, and so we use the quantum Monte Carlo method to study the interaction so that we can better understand this system and optimize it. So blue water gives us the power to do very expensive calculations, and the result, we use the three methods to do to consider the interaction both at the molecule level and at the surface level, and all three methods agree with each other very well, and then we get the force field parameters based on the energy, and the contact angle values use this parameter agree very well with the experiments. And we would like to special thank NSF and Air Force for the funding, and also again Blue Waters for the resources. And with that, I will conclude my talk. And thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
To what extent are finding seeds for your Monte Carlo in a distributed way? Is that something that slows you up, or is that pretty easy to do?
You mean?
Like when you're doing a Monte Carlo over a bunch of nodes, finding consistent seeds so that you've got one Monte Carlo, or how do you handle that?
I don't have answer to that because I didn't develop this code.
No problem.
Yeah, I don't have answer to that. Sorry.
Well, I'm just curious if we go back to your Hamiltonian slide. So the red term seems to be cheaper to calculate than the black term. Is that the case?
Wait, right term?
The Hamiltonian V, the potential. The red term seems to be just a plain sum, but the other term is a pairwise sum. So.
This is also pairwise sum because it's electron-electron interaction. This is electron nuclei interaction.
I see. So actually, the red term is more expensive.
Yeah. Because that term makes the equation inseparable. For this one, it's still one electron interaction, right?
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.